Hello and welcome to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, your weekly dose of the top pro-life news and issues, all from a Catholic perspective. I am your host, Catherine Hadro, in our Washington, D.C. studio. Thank you for joining us. In this week's show, after a major IVF mix-up makes the news, we speak with a top bioethicist about the trouble with in vitro fertilization. We speak out against a deceptive abortion demonstration and this.
It really was a calling from God. You know, I'm here because God put a calling on my life.
Hear the journey this pro-life leader took on the life issue. But first, our top story, a senator condemns pro-abortion extremism on the Senate floor.
It is entirely possible that the next Democratic nominee for the highest office in our land will be publicly agnostic about the moral status of post-abortion infanticide. Morally agnostic about post-abortion infanticide. Let's be clear. These candidates are wildly and spectacularly out of the mainstream in American life.
Senator Ben Sasse called out the Democratic presidential candidates during a floor speech earlier this summer. 7 of the candidates currently serve in the U.S. Senate. Those are Senators Cory Booker, Kirsten Gillibrand, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Michael Bennet, all of whom voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act earlier this year, which would have protected babies who survive abortions. Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse. Senator, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
What was your main message in the pro-life speech you recently gave on the Senate floor?
You know, everybody in America should be pro-mom and pro-science and pro-babies. I wish these two political parties were wrestling again about an ideological spectrum, about level of government intervention in the economy, but that there was room for pro-life people in both parties. I'm obviously a very conservative, pro-life Republican, but it is tragic what's happening inside the Democratic Party. This debate that they had in South Carolina a few weeks ago, sponsored by Planned Parenthood, is just a significant departure from the American political tradition. The Democratic Party is caught in the grips of the radically anti-baby, pro-abortion abortion industry, and it's just a tragic thing. And I think we need to highlight how quickly the Democratic Party is abandoning people in their coalition that used to be pro-mom and pro-baby. And I wish the Democratic Party, though it's not my party, I wish the Democratic Party again would be serious about the reality of the most voiceless victims among us.
And to that point, you are the author of the Senate's Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, which would protect babies who survive abortions. Every Democrat senator running for president voted against it. What does that, in your opinion, reveal about the Democratic Party's stance on abortion today?
Yeah, I mean, it is such a marked change over the course of the last 20 years. 20 years ago, the Democratic Party's mantra, and you even heard Hillary Clinton saying it as recently as a couple of years ago, used to be that they wanted abortion to be legal and safe, but rare. They said that abortion was a problem. They wanted it to be legal. I obviously strongly disagree with them on that, but they said that they wanted it to be rare. Now they regularly celebrate it. They have this shout your abortion nonsense, and you have the disgraced governor of Virginia, Ralph Northam, talking bizarrely on the radio about the choice to decide whether or not to kill a baby after she's already been born and is struggling for life and breath on the hospital table. There's some really horrific things happening in the Democratic Party, and you saw that on the vote on my Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, where we got a handful of Democrats, but none of them that are running for president right now would have the courage to say something that is so obviously true, which is that a baby is a baby, and a baby is obviously a baby that's already been born, has dignity and deserves protections. I believe that in utero as well, but their party is just doing some really horrific stuff right now, and I think we need to shine a spotlight on it to draw attention to it so that regular folks across America can say to these candidates, where is your humanity? Where is your heart?
One of your Senate colleagues who is running for president, Kirsten Gillibrand, recently compared holding a pro-life position to racism. What is your response to that specific claim, Senator?
Yeah, it's such insane nonsense. So the First Amendment protects the rights to free speech, religion, press, assembly, and protest. And if you want to look deeply in the history of these two movements, the pro-life movement, which believes in the universal dignity of everybody who's created in God's image, regardless of your skin color, your ancestry, regardless of your sex, male or female, we believe in the pro-life movement in the universal dignity of everybody. The pro-abortion movement actually has its roots closely intertwined with eugenics. So the racist history runs exactly opposite to what Senator Gillibrand bizarrely said as she pandered to the pro-abortion industry.
And finally, what do you want your Senate colleagues running for president to know about the pro-life movement and pro-life Americans?
Well, so first of all, let's just start with the basic truth, but then I'll add something that's about politics as well. The basic truth is when you look at these babies in utero and you see these images of babies as they develop, it turns out that they're babies. They're humans, and they have lots and lots of dignity, and they have rights, and we should be talking about these babies and the God who created them and the fact that they're image bearers of a great God who gives us the blessings of birth. But in addition, at the level of politics, these folks should know how far out of the mainstream they are. It turns out that when you get one level deeper than the question, do you consider yourself more pro-life or more pro-abortion rights, where America is pretty evenly divided, but when you get one level deeper and you start asking questions about do you, the American voter, think that there should be protections for babies who are at the age of viability? Or how do you think, which is moving from 24 to 23 to 22 to 21 weeks, some pretty amazing medical technological developments. Or when you ask questions like, where should the U.S. line up out of the 200 nations in the world about how we protect the most vulnerable among us? Right now, America has somewhere between the 4th and the 7th most liberal abortion laws out of all 200 countries on earth. We're between the 4th and the 7th most liberal. That's not where the American people want to be. Well under 30% of Americans really believe we should have as permissive a set of laws around the abortion regime as we have today, and more than 2/3 of Americans think America's laws are way too far to the left for where America actually is on this issue. So I hope that these Democratic presidential candidates will get out of their echo chambers and actually go meet some of the little old ladies that are praying outside abortion clinics in a place like Nebraska, and realize that these are people who have a deep conviction that God has called us to love the most vulnerable among us, and that's why we in the pro-life movement fight. And I think, frankly, the ways we fight are not primarily about legislation, as important as that is, but the ways we fight are primarily by coming alongside young women who might have a pregnancy that they didn't plan for and that they might be considering aborting. But it turns out when they meet people who love them and want to love their baby and support them, lots of really wonderful things happen. So the heart of the pro-life movement is strong, it's headed in the right direction, and its center isn't in Washington, D.C., it's in all the neighborhoods where your listeners actually live.
Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska, thank you so much for taking time to be with us.
Thanks for having me.
Joining us now for a reaction and analysis on more pro-life headlines is Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications at the Susan B. Anthony List. Mallory, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Catherine.
First off, what do you make of what Senator Sasse said about his colleagues, calling them out?
Yes, well, he's absolutely right. I mean, we have 77% of Americans supporting his legislation, the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, and not a single one of the Democrat senators who are running for president could support that legislation. And absolutely long gone are the days of alleged safe, legal, and rare abortions. And it just shows, the way the party has moved so extreme.
And as we discussed with Senator Sasse, presidential candidate Senator Kirsten Gillibrand recently compared holding a pro-life view to that of racism.
Right.
What's your response to that?
Well, that is what we call extreme pandering. I mean, this is just pandering to the most outrageous far left base of the Democratic Party. It's actually, as you know, and our viewers probably know, it's the abortion movement whose history is steeped in racism and eugenics.
Turning now to more pro-life headlines that happened this week, the HHS department announced this week it will immediately begin implementing President Trump's Protect Life rule. Mallory, what's the significance of this?
Yes, well, this is hugely significant. So this is new regulations that are meant to draw a very bright line between abortion and family planning. The regulations don't cut a single penny for family planning, which that's a separate issue that we could get into as Catholics, but it's about saying abortion is not healthcare and it's not family planning. So it's a huge victory that the Trump administration is going to implement the rule right away, and that's thanks to the Ninth Circuit Court, which I never thought I would say that. I mean, the Ninth Circuit is one of the most liberal pro-abortion of all the circuit courts, so it's notable that we have this court victory that while the litigation is pending, because the court hasn't yet ruled on the merits of the rule, but while litigation is pending, that the rule can go into place.
And finally, Mallory, in another major headline this week, Dr. Leana Wen announced that in a secret meeting, the Planned Parenthood Board of Directors decided to fire her.
Yes.
What's your take on this, and what is the signal to you that Planned Parenthood has separated themselves from Dr. Leana Wen less than a year after hiring her?
Right. Well, I think one thing is clear, and that is Planned Parenthood is scrambling. They pivoted to a doctor, someone that was going to be focused on the so-called medical, approach to abortion, and that hasn't been working. They're returning now to their uber political roots. And I think that, she said that there was philosophical differences. Dr. Wen thinks that legislators don't have a role to play. And here we are, more than 45 years after Roe versus Wade. The American people are crying out for justice on this issue. They want to have their voices heard, and that's why we've seen such a surge in pro-life states with state legislators implementing laws that reflected the will of the people. We are not standing for the most radical status quo that we've had of abortion on demand up until the moment of birth paid for by taxpayers. That's what Roe versus Wade has allowed. And it's very unpopular, it's wrong, and Dr. Wen didn't want to talk about it in those terms, and now we're seeing the pro-abortion lobby lose all this ground at the state level. So they're putting in someone that's more political, and I think it's clear that they are going to return to their roots as a very political organization.
We'll have to keep our eye on it, as I know that we will. Mallory Quigley, Vice President of Communications for the Susan B. Anthony List. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Over 125 members of Congress have asked the Trump administration to finalize a pro-life rule that would clarify how abortion coverage is listed in health insurance plans under the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. The rule would require insurers to collect separate payments for elective abortion coverage in Obamacare plans, because even though that is the law, insurers have been permitted to ignore it. The new pro-life patient protection rule would change that, and that brings us to this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com to tell President Trump and Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar to finalize the proposed patient protection rule. When you get to our website, ProLifeWeekly.com, you'll be able to fill out your information and deliver this pro-life message directly to President Trump and Secretary Azar. American consumers deserve transparent information about the hidden abortion surcharge and the opportunity to avoid plans that cover abortion during the 2020 open enrollment period. Consumers will be protected from the abortion surcharge when this proposed rule is finalized. So let's make sure our voice is heard. Send your message by going to ProLifeWeekly.com. Turning now to our next segment, two couples are suing a California fertility clinic after a mix-up resulted in a woman giving birth to two infants who were not genetically related to her or each other.
Who wants to meet their child in the lobby of a hotel? It was heartbreaking. It was terrible.
That is Ani Manukian, who, along with her husband, have filed a lawsuit against the Chaw Fertility Center in Los Angeles, alleging the clinic mistakenly implanted their embryo in a New York woman. That woman, who is not publicly identified, gave birth to two boys, the second boy also belonging to another couple. The birth mother believed she was pregnant with her own biological children, but genetic testing proved otherwise. Manukian also claims she was previously implanted with at least one embryo belonging to a stranger when she thought the embryo was her own. That implantation did not result in a successful pregnancy. The Manukians had to sue to obtain custody of their own child. The Catholic Church teaches IVF is immoral because it separates the act of procreation from the marital act between a husband and wife. For Pro-Life Analysis, we are joined now by Jennifer Lahl. She has 25 years experience as a pediatric critical care nurse, is the founder and president of the Center for Bioethics and Culture Network, and frequently speaks out against the infertility industry, including in her award-winning documentary, Exploitation. Jennifer, welcome to the show. This story is heartbreaking. Did it surprise you this happened?
No, it didn't surprise me. It saddened me. It didn't surprise me because it's happened before, and we know that human error happens. And unfortunately, it happened in a really tragic way in the case of these twins that were born.
This case was initially caught because the twins who were born did not resemble their Asian descent parents. But how common do you expect mix-up like this are, especially with an uptick in vitro?
You know, we don't have any statistics on how common it happens. We just know, again, as a nurse, you know, errors happen in hospitals. Errors happen in human life. And these are just those most unfortunate errors. So how much it happens, how often? And as you said, it wasn't only because of the mixed race issue that these were even picked up. How many times has this happened where it's gone unnoticed is what I worry about.
The Minukians were forced to launch a lawsuit in order to get custody of their son. How does the IVF industry complicate keeping a family together?
Yeah, the laws around assisted reproduction are very murky, especially in the United States. You know, this kind of embryo mix-up happened in Italian law, and Italian law gave the children that were born to the birth mother, because in Italy, it's recognized that whoever gives birth to the child is the legal parent. So it's a very murky, unsettled area of the law. And, you know, these are children at the end of the day that were, grew in the womb of a woman for 9 months. They grew together as siblings, twins. They knew each other as brothers in this particular case, and had to be separated. And there's just no winners. There's no winners in this kind of a human error mix-up. It's a real tragedy.
Jennifer, there are an increasing number of people here who are born via IVF, not to mention the infertility issue is an incredibly personal and emotionally charged one. So that being said, how do you suggest communicating to a couple considering IVF that they should reconsider?
Yeah, well, we have almost 1 million frozen human embryos in the United States, which sort of speaks to how common this is. And we know that we have almost 1 million because there's a huge failure rate. So part of my, counsel, if you will, to a couple considering this is it's very costly. It has a very, very high failure rate. Not everybody who goes down the IVF pathway will get that baby that they want. There's errors that happen, as in this particular tragic case. And there's risk. Apart from the teaching of the Catholic Church, there are health risks to the mother and to the children that are produced through these high-tech pregnancies.
Mm-hmm. And again, to reiterate, the Catholic Church does teach that IVF is immoral. Jennifer Lahl of the Center for Bioethics and Culture Network, thank you for shedding some light onto this.
My pleasure. Thank you.
When we come back,
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my child.
Catherine Glenn Foster's journey to President of Americans United for Life has been a powerful one. We share it with you. Stay tuned as EWTN Pro-Life Weekly continues after this break. Welcome back to EWTN Pro-Life Weekly. I am your host, Catherine Hadro. A panel of abortion activists portray the procedure in a very deceptive way, all while trying to elicit laughter from the crowd. That is this week's Speak Out segment. At least one panel at the liberal Netroots Nation conference in Philadelphia this past weekend was focused on spreading pro-abortion propaganda. It was moderated by Liz Winstead, a so-called comedian and co-creator of The Daily Show. At one point, a panelist mimed what she claimed an 8-week abortion procedure would look like on a watermelon.
This is a cannula, and this is what actually will remove the pregnancy. It goes through the cervix and into the uterus. So, and that's it. That's it. This is the whole, I said it yesterday and it got left. It's the whole shebang. So.
After the crowd's laughter following the abortion demonstration, the panelists then likened the abortion procedure to caring for a woman who has suffered a miscarriage.
It is also the gentle care for managing a miscarriage. So when we restrict access to abortion care and abortion training, we are also preventing clinicians from understanding how to appropriately care for people who are losing pregnancies naturally.
There is a reason these activists are not using anatomically correct baby models for demonstrating an abortion, because the truth would undeniably show how gruesome an abortion is and that it ends a human life. This is not a discussion that should be moderated by a comedian nor receive audience laughter. It is a tragedy. And in addition to being scientifically deceptive, these panelists are emotionally deceptive as well. How dare they conflate abortion with miscarriage? Abortion is the intentional killing of an unborn child, while miscarriage is a devastating loss of human life that occurs naturally. Mothers mourn miscarriages. And here, we see abortion activists trying to emotionally manipulate that raw pain. Unsurprising, considering the abortion industry is built on manipulation. It is so obvious the abortion industry is desperate to recruit more abortionists with these lies. But hopefully future healthcare workers realize that ending innocent human life goes against their very mission. Remember, there is something you can do to counter today's culture of death. Follow this week's call to action. Go to ProLifeWeekly.com to tell President Trump and Health and Human Services Secretary Alex Azar to finalize the proposed patient protection rule. Many of the top pro-life leaders today had a powerful journey that brought them to the forefront of the movement. That includes the president of a premier pro-life legal team. And for this week's ProLife Focus, we share her story with you.
We never become stronger as women when we abort our own children.
From Capitol Hill in D.C.,
American taxpayer dollars should be spent on helping people to live and live well.
to your TV. Americans United for Life President Catherine Glenn Foster is a fierce defender of the unborn.
The Supreme Court needs to wake up. It is not women who need to change, but a nation that would discriminate against pregnant and parenting women.
She can be frequently found educating others on how the abortion industry preys on vulnerable women. It is, tragically, a truth Glenn Foster knows all too well.
You know, there are so many different catalyst moments that people have when it comes to their journey to become pro-life and to really speak out for life, to be on the forefront standing for life. In my case, it was a personal abortion story.
At just 19 years old, Glenn Foster faced an unplanned pregnancy and, unaware of the pro-life movement's resources, did not know where to turn.
So I went to the internet and I found the second cheapest abortion facility that I could find. It seemed like, okay, maybe it's a little bit safer. and I booked an appointment for that Saturday. I knew that I couldn't wait any longer than that if I tried to wait longer, the bonding that was already happening would just have kept going. And that Saturday, I aborted my child.
She describes the abortion experience as devastating, especially when she realized clinic staff did not actually care about her or her choice.
They always do an ultrasound to make sure that they're doing the right procedure and to make sure that that they charge you the right amount of money. So they're doing this ultrasound. They said that I wasn't even far enough along yet, and I said, well, there's my answer. You know, there's the voice of God saying, you know, I'll find another way. And I said, okay, great. You know, that's that. And they said, well, hang on, let's check again. And they checked again, and they said, oh, just over the line, old enough after all. And so I said, well, can I see the ultrasound? You know, it's my medical record, it's my child, let me see the ultrasound as part of my decision-making process. And they said no, they said that was against their policy. And so I went to the back, to the table, and just everything in me just screamed out that it was wrong, that I shouldn't be there, that I should leave. And so I tried to get up, and in the end, they held me down and forcibly aborted my child.
Okay, underhand. Yes. Woo! Good job, Abigail.
Today, years later, Catherine Glenn Foster now strives to protect unborn children and values the children she has at home with her.
Okay, go ahead and roll. You get 2 every time. Here you go.
Her pro-life direction is one she credits to divine intervention.
Going to law school was a God thing. God just laid it on my heart and said, you need to go take the LSATs and the entrance exam to law school. And I thought about it, I prayed about it, I said, you know what, I'm going to do it.
With a law degree from the prestigious Georgetown University under her belt, Glenn Foster went on to serve as litigation counsel to Alliance Defending Freedom and advise the U.S. Senate Judiciary Committee and other congressional committees before landing at her current role at Americans United for Life. Creating effective pro-life legislation is an increasingly crucial task, with growing speculation Roe v. Wade could soon be overturned. And working to pass pro-life laws is taking Catherine Glenn Foster full circle.
My first season at AUL, my first legislative session at AUL, one of my favorite bills that was passed was an ultrasound bill, so that at least women, when we're in that abortion facility, when they're already doing the ultrasound on us, when we ask to see it, they have to say yes. And it seems so common sense. It's part of our medical records, it's part of informed consent, and yet all too many women don't get to see our babies until it's too late.
Whether at home with family or at the forefront of the pro-life movement, Catherine Glenn Foster thanks God for where she wound up in her journey.
I wouldn't be here if it weren't for my child. I probably wouldn't even know about the pro-life movement. I certainly wouldn't have come along this journey in the way that I did, because it really was a calling from God. I'm here because God put a calling on my life and said, you need to redeem this experience. You need to do everything that you can to make sure that other women, other girls don't find themselves in this same situation, stripped of their real life-affirming options. You need to stand up for the children, the youngest, the most vulnerable, the tiniest members of our communities, and just make sure that someone is giving them a voice too.
Thank you to Catherine for sharing your journey with us. And to our viewers, before we let you go, I have an update for you. EWTN Pro-Life Weekly now has an online newsletter. We can now deliver an email directly to you with the latest show and updates. All you have to do is sign up, and to do that, simply go to EWTN.com/pro-life, one word. That's EWTN.com/pro-life. If you go there, you will see a pop-up where you can insert your email address. Then we'll come back to you and your inbox. And of course, we can always stay connected on social media, so I hope to see you there as well. Until next time, remember, life is a gift. Your life is a gift. God bless.